What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for sticking around, being patient. We're going to do another video about the progress on the Born Free build. So we made some decisions. I think when we talked last, we were kind of up in the air about really kind of what we're going to do with building the frame, different front ends, what was going to happen with the motor. So the motor checked out to be good. We went ahead and sourced a legit top end from Dan Carr at DC Choppers, and we sent everything else out to be polished to our friend Gus up in Oklahoma, who handles all the polishing and the chrome plating. We decided, instead of using either one of those front ends, that we narrowed a 6-over front end. So this is the new front end we just finished up. And they're kind of tricky, took a little time, but we're real happy with the way it turned out. But the tricky part with what we've got going on is that I thought that the Vulture was a 6-over front end, and it's not. It's more like a 4-over front end, because we inherited that front end with those parts that we bought and had to correct a couple things. So it turns out this front end here is about 2.5 to 3 inches longer than the other one. So that changed a lot of the geometry on the rolling chassis that we're doing. So with the rolling chassis and the frame, I had an idea about maybe doing some resin inlays within the frame. I've never really seen that done before, and we really like the resin that we did in the tank of the Vulture, and I kind of wanted to incorporate that a little bit more on this build. So in some of the sections of the frame, right back here, we have these, it's kind of like a spear, and the plan is to do that in a resin inlay. So that's on both sides of the frame and on the front down tube section. And we ended up using this portion of a twisted knuckle frame. That's why the bottom areas have some brazing, and we just kind of worked off that a little bit, but it was pretty twisted. We probably would have been better off just to buy all the pieces individually, but we ended up cutting this stuff up. And what I like about this, unfortunately it's going to cause an oil tank problem, but we were able to narrow the top of the frame by about 1 inch, and it's going to give it from the back a real nice slick and streamlined profile, where normally it would be a lot wider. This would be a lot further forward. We leaned the seat post area a little bit further back, so we don't have all those crazy panhead clearance issues on the seat post and all that stuff. But the crazy thing is, what happened is the front end has kicked the whole neck and everything up. This neck's going to be 2.5 inches taller than the Vulture. So it's going to kind of be a little bit more of an extreme. I know we're talking about toning it down a little bit, but we decided to crank it up a notch instead. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the front end on and the front wheel, and we'll get the roller going, show you guys what that looks like, and then talk about some gas tank ideas. Yep, we're going to get the front end on here. This neck cup's a little tricky, as you'll see in the video how. This is the internal fork stop, and what I like to do is that little notch right there, when the beauty of building the frame is when the neck's off, you can do everything you need to do to it. So we have centered in here perfect our 832 holes for the little neck badge that we do. And you can actually cut a 1/4 inch slot there, so that fits real nice. But it's hard to keep in there one-handed. Hopefully. There we go. And then slide this on. There we go there. Gets a little heavy. So we're a little bit chillier than we were last time we filmed around here. It's the end of December, and we just got a cold front that came through. It was about 37 degrees in here this morning when I was fixing up when I was finishing the down tube and all that stuff. Our man here, Chris Jolly's only got so much time. We got to coordinate our schedule. So where's that ratchet? Here we go. Back there's a panhead motor. That's Chris Rosenberg's panhead motor. He's going to loan me or loan us and help with having some exhaust ports to, if we get to the point of needing some exhaust fab work to get done, we can use that motor if we get in a pinch. And this spool wheel is the front wheel off the Death Machine, which is another subject. That bike needs to get finished too, but you can only do so many at once. So, but we're going to use it as a loaner. It looks like we were very close to where we needed to be here. We're just going to slide this guy in here a little bit. Let me crank this guy up there a little bit, Chris. That sucker just barely started. There we go. That'll be just enough so we can do a little bit of a stance check with you guys here. And I'm gonna set her down a little bit and see how we're looking. So we wanted to allow the frame, help us out a little bit there. So this frame's actually significantly taller than the Vulture frame. I can't remember what we inherited with the tail section there, but this whole frame is going to be about 1 inch taller, and we're expecting about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch sag with the weight of the drivetrain. But we want it a little bit taller in the front, should be about 1 inch taller in the front here to here. So it looks like we're looking pretty good there. You know, I like that a lot right there. We'll go ahead and rinky-dink jack I've been using for like 10 years, but it does what it's supposed to do. And then these were the bars that we used as a mock-up for the Vulture, which we ended up going a little bit taller, but you know, be something like that maybe. And then decided against the Wassel tank. The idea now is big thanks to Lowbrow for all the stuff they do for us builders to help us out with parts to get everything ready. But this is an Alien tank that I originally wanted to narrow a set of Fat Bob tanks, but the Fat Bobs are longer. At that point in time, we thought that the frame configuration was going to be a lot closer to the Vulture, which is actually the backbone's shorter. We've already done the backbone work here to go ahead and get these slugs in here, and they're perfectly vertical. So what we'll do is when we cut this tank up, we'll go ahead and set these. I have some bungs made up here on how these guys will, I made some T-caps. These are 3/8 bolts, and they go in already pre-planned from the bottom. But when we got the frame together, we had the bolts in there and kind of made sure they were pretty vertical or whatever. But anyway, the idea now is to narrow this Alien tank. This is the same tank that's on Francine, our panhead, but I pancaked that one and took like 1 inch out of the center. This one we're going to leave tall and maybe take 1 inch out of the center to get it. I want it to be more narrow than the sides of the Springer. So that's kind of the side profile we're playing with here, you know, and I think I like that. I don't want to do another Sportster tank if we don't have to. I think the Sportster tank on the Vulture looks great. It looks appropriate for that bike, but this is going to be a little more extreme, and you can kind of get a vibe of it. It's way up in the air, you know, which will be cool, you know. So the rake we ended up going with, that we were playing around with, the rake on this bike is going to be different as well. And if you notice, it's way deraked. So this is 5 inches up and deraked back to 28 degrees, which was challenging to do because, you know, if you want your frame jacked up a little bit, it doesn't read level to level on a table. All your, you know, your degrees and all your measurements you're figuring out on the Newman jig, all that stuff's level. So you put it on the table. This lift has been leveled pretty close, and you know, when you want to get the stance to sit right, you know, there's probably some math you can do. We just tear it down, mock it up, play with it some more. It's kind of the fun part, right? You know, so but I think I'm pretty excited about how that's looking. It'll be significantly different than a stock bike with a longer front end on it and a stock rake in the 31-degree area. With this being 28 degrees and way up, I think it's really going to stand out. You know, so well, that's where we're at. We're going to keep knocking it out. We're going to start getting a drivetrain in here and start figuring out an oil tank. I might narrow a stock one. Thought about a round one. Need to make some decisions on whether or not that's going to be a mag-fired bike or a battery distributor type bike. But you know, it'll be a fully polished 51 motor. and transmission. So we'll see how that goes, but that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for patiently waiting till we can get something looking good for you guys, but we'll look forward to doing the next video and the next progress. So thanks a bunch, and thanks for supporting the page.